And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be normal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Rolling up. Roger, roll, Atlantic.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Echo down to nominal.
Flight downside FD off. Bring in FD off. Off. It's orange!
125! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage.
What is it?
Put that in the big bag, you know.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
If the methane would be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You dead? Sure. We don't need any more of these.
Hello everyone and welcome to another NASA Spaceflight live stream here out of Starbase Boca Chica. As you can see, we have venting, which usually means that we are about to talk, and we just started talking, so there you go. And it's not only me that will commentate to get today's Ship 28 stream. I'm joined by two wonderful and very knowledgeable people about Starship, starting with Alex. Alex, how is it going?
It's going well. I'm really frosty and excited to see today. Yeah, we'll see what's going on with Ship 28.
There we go. That's Alex for you. Starting with Alex, and also I think is this your second Starbase stream, right, Ryan?
Yeah, they had the first one was the Ship 28 rollout here. So this is going to be fun. We were kind of expecting testing today, and then the orbital tank farm spun up, and then, well, now they decided to spin up this tank farm, so double testing, fun.
Yay! Let's do this. And of course, I'm Adrian Bile. I'm your today's host for the stream. And as we progress through the stream, please make sure to tag at NASASpaceflight in chat, as we are trying to answer all of your questions that are coming up today, since there might be some questions relating to this test. And starting here with Alex. Alex, I just want to give the overall playing field here. What's happening with Ship 28? Is this a static fire? Is this a spin prime, a pre-burn, a tanking test? What are we looking at?
Ain't that the $1 million question, right? We don't really know what else they're going to be doing, because they obviously... So, they could... Look, they could go straight into a static fire, and everyone probably wants that. But let's be honest, this is a new version of Starship. It's not version 2, but it is improved over Ship 25, right? It's done its cryo-proof testing at Masseys, but it was a long time ago as well. It didn't have the engines back then. So they could be testing multiple things here today. So it could be as little, or... Well, it's already a lot for me. As little as just a cryo test with methane and liquid oxygen on board, because we've seen the recondenser active, so that that basically indicates there's going to be methane being loaded onto the vehicle. But it could just be a bit of, loading methane and loading liquid oxygen and trying out things with this new vehicle, new testing, things like that, and then go into a spin prime or go into a static fire test later on. That could be the case. Whatever is going on today, I think that is sort of, again, the $1 million question. We don't know, but that's why we're here live, right? Where we're covering this testing, and whatever happens, we'll be here commentating.
Is the grass vent now going over the gateway to Mars sign?
It looks like it.
Yeah, I just saw that on the other view, and that's the grass vent. It's even more visible now. I don't like this.
It's just for you, Adrian. Just for you.
I'm so excited. I love grass vent. That's always a fun thing to do. Ryan, what's your expectation for today's test?
Kind of same boat as Alex. We'll see. The one thing Alex didn't mention is the test that Ship 26 did perform, which was a pre-burner.
Yeah, right.
To see that. I mean, I don't know if we will, but again, the $1 million question is, it's going to be wait and see what they do here.
I'm looking forward to wait and see here. And Alex, correct me if I'm wrong here, but we might be just under an hour away here, bit depending on the ship timeline, right? Because ship tends to be very fast.
Yeah, unless they take their time. You know, sometimes they also take their time. They hold at some point in the count or do some other kind of testing or some kind of other, thing with a countdown. But definitely very, very interesting. We could be about an hour away from any sort of testing. And then also, if you see all of the other camera views, you can also see that it's not only the suborbital tank farm being active today, the orbital tank farm is also active. It seems like they're testing all of the new fancy bits that they have installed over the last month since the second launch of a Starship was just a month ago. Can you imagine? It was it's like it feels like it was a longer time ago, but it was just a month ago. And yeah, so right now there's obviously no vehicles on the orbital launch mount, no vehicles hooked up to that orbital tank farm. But either way, there's a lot of new hardware already installed, and so it's really good that they are testing that as well, because that puts us in the mood already to test Booster 10 in the near future.
Absolutely. I mean, it's kind of cool to see really this test campaign already starting from a month after flight. It seems they're kind of good to go. They seem like they're really in this pace now where they are really wanting to get the vehicles ready. And once the vehicles are ready, then from there on out, it's just waiting for the paperwork and for the safety investigation and the potential other implications with the FAA. Once that is done, then they're good to go. So I really hope we see a faster cadence here with this flight and don't have to wait. What was it? 7 months again? I think it was. No, it was not 7.
Yeah,
it was
7 months. Yeah.
Oh, 7.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, 7.
There we go. I was not wrong. It was a long time. So let's hope we get some more Starship action. Again, if you have questions for us, tag at NASASpaceflight in chat. We have a handy tool that makes sure that we get these questions. Starting with a question here from Neat Pizza to Ryan. Why has the LR 11,000 crane been moved between the new tanks and Highway 4?
It's a very interesting question why that's been moved there. There's been some speculation that it could be moved there so it has access to take one of the cryo shells away. They don't have those specialized stand anymore for those, so it's kind of odd on that one. Or that's just their new parking spot to be away from S-26, since its old parking spot was the landing
28.
pad in 28. Get mixed up. Oh, too many ships these days.
Yes.
The landing pad is now taken up by a bunch of tanks, so that's probably where it's just its parking spot is these days. I really don't know, honestly.
Maybe we will see the end of some older tanks there as well. We'll see what happens there. Alex, there's a question here about Ship 28. What's the status of the payload bay door on Ship 28? And in general, could we see Starlings on this flight? What's your overall grasp on that question?
Well, the status of the door is that it's there, which for previous, basically Ship 24 and Ship 25 didn't have a door, but it was welded shut. So they basically had a sheet of metal right on top of that to cover it up. And so on Ship 28, that is not the case. Maybe yet is maybe the word to be put there. We don't really know if they're gonna close it, or if they're gonna be, or if they're gonna be doing, just an actual flight with a door in there. So I'm kind of slowly talking right now because I'm seeing some discolorations on the liquid oxygen tank of Ship 28.
Yeah, I saw that. It's always when you see this, when you start to see this discoloration. Just to explain that for viewers, discoloration usually means that there's a temperature difference somewhere in there. And one of the main sources for temperature difference is, they try to load cryogenic fuels into this ship, and once that would be entering that tank, that might be part of drastically cooling down the interior of one of these tanks, which then gives it. Yeah, there's a discoloration. Yeah. There
Well,
it is.
there's a problem here because this
Oh,
is
no.
the fun. This is the fun stuff. You know how Ryan said before, in a slip up, that this was ship 26 instead of ship 28, and so I corrected him and said this is ship 28. But actually,
Oh no.
you see that those 4 rings are discolorated, like they are different color than the rest of the vehicle. Well,
Yeah.
that is coming from ship 26. That's actually a barrel section that was supposed to be on ship 26, but that was donated to ship 28. So technically, Ryan was not that wrong.
It's
So-
part of it. Yes.
Yeah, it's the midlock
But it's
section.
But it still looks a bit more discolored than usual, right? It's I maybe it's just me, but I think there might be at least some partial cooling here going on that maybe changes the color. We'll
Yeah.
see.
So, so what I was saying is not that it is that it is discolored now. Is that it seems to have changed color over time. That is the important stuff.
Yeah.
It's not that it just looks different than the rest of the vehicle. It's just that it changes color as as it gets colder. Then you see different coloration on the vehicle as it gets colder and colder, and until you start seeing frost, obviously. But yeah.
I also maybe it's just me, but I'm also imagining a same effect of discoloration now in the methane tank. I feel like it changes in color right now. I'm A/B testing here, but that might be me. So we are here to watch this, and there will be discoloration. I promise you that. And with that, I just jinxed it, and there will not be any discoloration on any of this now. So there we go. I want to thank RC Horseman here for a 5 Red Team membership gifted. Thank you so much, RC, and I hope these 5 people really enjoy their membership here. So thank you so much for that. Oh, that's an interesting one. So there's an interesting part about the third Starship flight upcoming that they want to test on the potential coast phase, right? And with the potential propellant transfer demo. And the question here is, do you think the refueling demonstration will work the first time? And I think that's a fun question to talk about. Ryan, which potential problems do you see for orbital refueling demo?
There could be a lot of problems. Their current method, which I think their current method is to use thrusters to transfer the propellant. I don't know, Alex, if you know that one off the top of your head. I will see how well it goes, because it should be. I think their idea is to do it from the headers to the main tank, or something along those lines. And there's a chance it works. There's a chance it doesn't work. I mean, if it doesn't work right away, the lucky thing is they have, like ship 29, ship 30, ship 31, and ship 32, and keep going and going and going. They have a lot of chances to try it before they actually need it. So there's the plus side on that. If it doesn't work on the first try, they can always come up with a solution and try it again on a later flight. So it's,
There we go.
I really don't know if it's gonna work or not. I guess that's the big question, right? That is it gonna work? Is it not gonna work? Then like that's the whole point of flying it and doing that test, I guess, of seeing if it works or not. And if it doesn't, then you try to figure out how to fix it.
Do I dare to say this is why they test?
Oh,
is that appropriate here? I mean, come on, it's appropriate.
You're
and
right,
space is
though.
hard, right?
Yeah.
More data, more better.
Any more phrases we can throw into this?
Hoppy?
That's not a phrase. Hoppy is not a phrase. It's the
name.
correct and right name of Starhopper. Anyway, Hazelnut here asking, what about the real ship 26? They worked on it and reinforced it. Alex, what's about the real ship 26?
Well, we don't really know what they're doing to it. They could be testing things as well, reinforcement of welds or something like it. Like maybe it's a new thing. We don't really know, to be honest, right now. We can only see and guess. My guess is that I don't know, and that we should be still looking for whatever they do with it. It's kind of weird though that they haven't really scrapped it right away. It could also be testing any fixes from Flight 2, right? Because it's still there, and so you could probably use it as a guinea pig before you implement those changes on Ship 28, for example. That's also
There-
a nice way to test that stuff. I don't know.
There was the thought with where they're adding these supports,
Mhm.
that it could be related to the weld beam that was buckling on ship
Oh, right, yeah.
24.2 for the payload bay, but
Hmm.
it's just pure speculation at this point, as with is a lot of things with the Starship program. Um, so it's just gonna be wait and see what they do with it. It's kind of become their ground test vehicle to just kind of play with.
Yeah, and we've seen that on other vehicles as well, where they have done. I seem to remember, might have been 20. I think it was either 22 or 15. It was one of those vehicles that I saw them cutting out pieces from the skirt, and then weeks later we saw them doing that with Ship 25, where they did those cutouts above the engine shield portion. It might have been 22 because 22 is the modern ones. It didn't have engines, but it had a modern skirt, and not 15. But I may be misremembering. Either way, the thing is, they do these things where they try out these new introductions, these new changes, these new additions on earlier ships and earlier vehicles, and then they implement those because they use them as guinea pigs, basically. Those you see the Rocket Garden, it's more like a sort of free stand of where you have all of your free hardware to be able to try anything else that you don't want to put on flight vehicles just yet. So that's mostly what you might be able to see out there with those vehicles. But yeah,
Yeah, if
Ship
I
26
remember
has
correct,
engines. I was mentioning Ship 22 in my whole thing.
if I remember correctly, there was even TPS, like obviously some TPS testing going on at the Rocket Garden at some point, where they just had like a cherry picker up on an older vehicle and suddenly started to put TPS tiles on it, and it was most likely just them testing out something related to these TPS tiles, because of course that vehicle itself was no longer relevant. So it seems like maybe it's just an intern playground sometimes, being like, "Hey, learn TPS tiles. Here you go. Put 5 on these on ship 15." So which doesn't work anymore because, well,
Yeah.
There's
yeah,
no SN15.
yeah, because they scrap the very important ones, but then they leave the ones we don't want there anymore. Ship 26.
They've been doing a lot of interesting stuff with the TPS recently. Like, they started it with Ship 28, where they were using a suction cup to try to pull tiles off, at least the glued ones, and they were able to pull a lot of them off, which was indicating that the adhesive was not working correctly at all. It wasn't adhering to the stainless very well. So, as we saw when Ship 28 was inside high bay, as they are doing currently with Ship 29, is they're going through and taking off the tiles that aren't good and
Hmm.
cleaning that area, and then possibly roughing it up, and then reinstalling the TPS. Because with how far along Ship 25 got, SpaceX wants as perfect as a heat shield as they can get to see if it can survive reentry. Because
Yeah, there you see it.
if these heat shields can survive reentry, then they got a lot going for them heading down the line.
Yeah,
For
because
sure.
there you can see the view right now of Ship 29. They have flipped all of these vehicles around. So Ship 29 was before on the back on the right of the highway, and then they moved out Ship 30 to be able to move Ship 28 to the launch site, and then they moved out Ship 29 and moved in Ship 30 to the back, and Ship 29 is now on the near the entrance. And so there you can see they're doing all of that testing that Ryan was talking about on those on those tiles. It's mostly on the gaps between sections, right, Ryan?
Yeah, the
Where they're
weld
doing all of
seams
that stuff.
where they don't have pins, but it's all adhesive.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And it's good
somewhere
because
near the flap fairings as well.
and that's good because for ship 25 there were a lot of people that were saying, oh my gosh, all of these tiles fell off, this is horrible. But also ship 25 didn't get this kind of attention on its heat shield tiles, or at least I didn't see any of it. It didn't look like they cared much, only just cover the places where, like before the flight, they covered a few of the places where they didn't have tiles, but that was it. I really don't remember doing that kind of work on ship 25. So now ship 28 has gotten that sort of thorough care on the heat shield tiles, and now ship 29 as well, and probably all of the upcoming vehicles as well. And maybe with version 2 of a Starship we're gonna get also new tiles. We'll see.
Yeah, overall, I think it looks like they're putting a lot of attention on the TPS right now, which makes sense, right? Because not only from the outside, it's probably a point where they think about, because so far they have not really had the ability to properly test it in the conditions they wanted to test it. So it's really a thing where they want to get a head start as much as they can and use these vehicle steps right now to just improve it while they are not reaching that point of flight yet. Because I bet there are some people at SpaceX who really hope for the last flight stack to reach that point so they can gather the data and have that for future flights. Another question here we got is if they do a static fire, do we need an OP notice, and do we have one? Alex, do we have an OP notice, and do they need one if they do a static fire?
Well, we don't have an overpressure notice. I don't think we've had any other kind of hint at any sort of a static fire today. I mean, it could be that they could go straight into a static fire test, but normally they like to do other kind of testing beforehand to make sure that things work. And so, again, it could be a spin prime, for example, today, or maybe a pre-burner test, like they did with ship 26. We don't really know. But if I were to bet, I will bet on something lesser than a static fire test. Maybe a pre-burner at most, but that's my bet.
There we go. And just a recap for everybody who might have just joined, we are watching Ship 28, which is the designated second stage for the next Starship flight, being tested individually. This is right now the first test that it has featuring engines. However, at this point, we do not know how far it will go into testing today and if it will show any engine activity in any shape or form. So we are just watching, good old tank watching here, and trying to answer as many questions as we can from you as we are going on here. Let's see. Adam here asking, could we ever see ship static fires at Masseys? Because then they could tear up Pad B and the whole suborbital tank farm. Then they could build OLM2 in its place. Ryan, what's your take on this question?
Well, there's a lot to this question. So there's a lot to go with Masseys when it comes to doing static fires. Like, I'd be very surprised if they ever got the approval to do it. That saying, they could have the approval, it's just not public yet. Because there's a lot of stuff dealing with any overpressure notices they have to put out, acoustic energy. Because if they static fire over at Masseys, they would have to shut down the Rio Grande for however long they have methane on the vehicle. And currently, as we can even see right now, when they're ready to do even methane loading onto the vehicle, they shut down for about a 1 mile radius around the vehicle. Doing that over at Masseys would still shut down Highway 4, as well as you'd have to close off area inside Mexico. I don't know how they would enforce such a thing. So that puts a lot of questions to that. Will they do it? If they can get approval, probably. I don't know if it actually helps their situation because they would still have to shut down Highway 4. in the long run, unless they can somehow get away with not doing that, which I'd be impressed at. But as of right now, I just don't see that happening. It'll be it's kind of a wait and see if they get approval along those lines. Now, if they do that and they do tear up the suborbital pad, my hope would be that it would turn into a massive tank farm for both pads, and they get rid of the current tank farm that they have. That's my vote, at least on that. So
there we go.
Yeah, I guess the big question, I guess, it is precisely about what else can you do at Masseys that, like how large of a test can you get from that side without impacting things like road closures at Highway 4? Because obviously the road to Masseys will be closed, but that road is pretty much unused. The road that the county cares for is Highway 4 because it goes all the way to the beach. And so I guess right now the question is precisely that. How big of a test can you get out of Masseys without needing that kind of closure and not disrupting a lot of the operations at the launch pad as well? Because soon enough, we're going to get that second launch tower, and they're going to need all the time they can to build that thing. You know, we're going to see them trying not to do as many tests on the launch side as possible, just precisely to get all of that construction work done, because otherwise they're not going to be able to build that thing that fast. But that is my main concern right now, like what kind of a big test you can get out of there. I think maybe a ship engine testing might be doable from Masseys with a lot of conditions and possibilities being included there. But then when you get into a booster testing, for example, with all engines, that starts to get very improbable. Like, I just don't see it. But we'll see. It's a matter of just waiting and see what happens with Massey.
Because the thing I've always wanted to see for Starship would be like a full duration static fire stand for booster. But we're talking something along the lines of the S1C stand at Stetis in order to do such a thing, which would be cool, but I have no idea where SpaceX would even put it. So
yeah, that thing is massive.
Alex, I will use this question to ask you an even bigger question, and I will just piggyback from that. Exosaurus Rex asking, how long after we start seeing frost will tests occur? And I'm using this question to just ask you, what are the steps we expect in this whole countdown, and what are we like? What's happening here over the next hour or so?
Yeah, so right now we're obviously waiting for that frost to appear on the ship liquid oxygen tank. I think it's gotten a little bit more discolored lately. I'm still going back and forth to try and see what's the progress.
It might be, yeah.
Yeah. Once we start seeing that frost, it might be about 40 to maybe an hour, 40 minutes to an hour until a test or something like that. Perhaps a little bit less. Definitely within an hour of that frost appearing usually is when that kind of testing, or testing in general, usually happens. We don't really know what sort of testing we're going to see today. We may see just a cryo test. Maybe it's just a spin prime. Maybe it's a pre-burner. It will be very weird, though, if it gets further than that, if it gets all the way to a static fire. But we should probably not say, oh, it's not going to happen. It could happen, right? It's just that lots of things could happen. It's just that it's less likely. But it doesn't mean that it's absolutely not going to happen. So that's sort of what we're thinking that we see we're gonna happen here. And so another thing that we probably will not see instead of will see is perhaps the methane tank will not get frosty. We usually get a lot of tests of the ship here at the suborbital pad where we see frost on the liquid oxygen tank, but we don't see frost on the methane tank. And usually that means that they have loaded just the transfer tube and or at least the transfer tube and the common bulkhead. but it hasn't risen above the weld line of that bulkhead. So that's more or less what we're waiting for here. We're also seeing a lot of testing of the orbital tank farm, but that's secondary today, I guess. It's exciting though, because that means Booster 10 is going to arrive at one point and use that new fancy, shiny new hardware that they have installed here at the orbital tank farm. All of the new pumps and subcoolers that have been installed, return lines and everything. It's going to be really, really exciting to see that testing, because especially for you and I, right, Adrian, because it's going to be new data for all our spreadsheets on the timings.
It's honestly really interesting in terms of how fast, like, will this accelerate the process, or will it just stop, for example, the hardware from wearing out that much? Like, you have it run on a lower actual volume. It's really an interesting thing to observe for this flight, and I'm really looking forward to A, the booster countdowns, and B, the wet dress rehearsal, because I think there might be some very big surprises here for us in how this all works and how the tank farm will behave. And yeah, I mean, it's one of these very exciting things that only, I think, about 10 people really care about. It's like, yay, but we 10 are excited.
Yeah, maybe instead of like 45 minutes from oil and vent start to propanol load, maybe it's like 20 minutes or something. And maybe it takes 1 hour to load the full rocket. We don't really know, right? But that's the exciting part of having new hardware on the overall tank farm, that now the timings are new and we start to learn new things.
Yep, absolutely. So let's see what happens there. Another question here I'm throwing to you, Ryan, so get ready. Why is the heat shield made out of countless tiles and not one bulk piece they can attach more securely?
Well, that'd be pretty impressive if they could make a piece of the heat shield tile of that size. That would be impressive. That could fit around the flaps and everything, and it could move with the flaps. That would I would be impressed if they could do that. But having them as small little tiles, it helps them like go around the curves of the ship. It also helps them go around the flaps a little bit better. If something gets damaged, like the heat shield were to get damaged, they can replace one or a couple tiles rather than an entire thing. So that helps a lot. It's just easier to do. In fact, it may not seem like it, but it's easier.
And if you think about it, you can also, like as you said, if it gets damaged, you don't need to replace the entire thing. But even if say instead of getting damaged, if it is like one falls off, one tile falls off, right? If the bigger heat shield just falls off, you don't get a heat shield. that seems like a bigger problem. Exactly. That's a front fell off kind of thing. It's like if the big thing falls off, then you start having a bigger problem. And then also it's the fact that then you will need, because there's one problem with the tiles already, and that's probably maybe why the version 2 tiles maybe a bit smaller, and it is that the larger they are, it's harder to keep them in place because they have all of these bending forces and the expansion and contraction of the metal and things like that. That affects the way that the heat shield tiles stuck on the vehicle, not only with the glue but also when they are mechanically installed, because the ones in between the sections, they are glued together, but the ones on the sections, on the barrel sections, they have studs to be able to install those. And the problem is, if you were to make a bigger heat shield tile, right, like one that covers the entire belly of the ship, then you're starting to get a lot of different bending forces from different parts of the vehicle. Like, you will need either a very plastic material that can bend and things like that, or you will need a really hefty way of installing all of that. Like, you will probably need some kind of underlying structure that is able to flex along the way or something. It will be very, very, very complicated. Whereas if you have these teeny tiny tiles, then it's much easier to individually glue them together. It is complicated because there's a lot of them, but individually it's rather easier, and that may be the reason why perhaps they're going with smaller tiles. There'll be more, but then individually maybe they stick together better. That's at least sort of the theory right now.
And less of a gap, so
That
on
is also true.
re-entry, less of a chance of hot gases getting in between the tiles than with a larger one.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's like if you imagine. Okay, this story might hit close to home for some people that have tried to assemble, for example, their own bed or their own, I don't know, desk at home. If you imagine how that sometimes doesn't fit anymore because the pieces are too big and you cannot get it to properly work because you didn't follow the manual properly. And now imagine that on a much bigger scale with much bigger parts. Like suddenly you have giant gaps on the one side and it's totally fitting on the other side, and you try to fit that. Like imagine your cupboard being assembled and that doesn't fit, and that now on a 9-meter scale.
Yeah. And one thing that I should mention is that there's usually this sort of comment of, oh, but the shuttle had tiles and they broke and it was super hard to refurbish. And it's like, yeah, but that was NASA, that was the shuttle, right? You were not having that was not a SpaceX. A SpaceX iterates and tries to change things here and there and tries to come up with new ways of doing things. Look, if the tiles, like if maybe in 5 years they figure out, oh, the tiles just don't work, we need something else, they come up with something else, and that's totally fine. Like that's not a game. Like that doesn't stop the whole thing, if you know what I mean, right? This is a SpaceX. That is not really any showstopper for them. If they think right now that this is the way to go, they're going to try to optimize it, to try to make it better. We've seen it with, I remember when Falcon 9 came around and everyone was saying, oh, 9 engines, that's crazy because, that's like the N1, because 30 engines, multiple engines, and they break and the rocket fails. And then Falcon 9 became the most reliable rocket out there. Then Falcon Heavy came along, 27 engines, same thing, it's crazy, blah, 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 because that's not the traditional way. And so it's like, look, and now they have done a rocket that can light 33 engines. It took a while, but on the second flight, it got all 33 engines going all the way to the hot staging moment. So the same thing can be the case with the heat shield tiles, where sure, they're falling off, they're doing this and that, right? They're not probably up to spec, but that's the whole way. They just iterate and do all of this stuff to be able to improve things. And at the end of the day, it's probably not going to look anything like the shuttle, where they took dozens of weeks to be able to fix everything and ready to fly again. So it may be way different than that.
Absolutely. I want to thank some people here. There's some support coming in, and I want to make sure we thank everybody that supports us in the way of memberships or super chats. Again, that's a way that we can do all of this. That's why we can sit here on 10 a.m. in the morning on a Saturday to commentate on a ship being frosty, or hopefully soon to be frosty. So thank you for all of the people I'm about to thank. Starting with Jeff Rowe, with 1 Rep Team membership gifted. Thank you so much for that. And then we have Sor GFX guy. I'm sorry. With a $10 super chat saying, can an adapter be placed on the OLM to allow it to be used as a ship test stand? I presume the aft flaps prevent the ship from being directly placed on the OLM. So I want to start with this. I will use my host power here to start with answering this question.
Do you have frost?
Can I still?
It's starting to appear.
Yep, I will quickly run this. But yes, we have frost on the vehicle. We have frost on ship 28, as it's getting now frosty and ready for whatever. To quickly answer this question, the more you think about it, there are more problems that you have to solve. The first thing, of course, is, yes, the flaps are in the way. So you have to elevate the whole thing by 4 or so meters with an adapter. Then you need to build a second ship QD that you somehow attach to it somewhere to even fuel the ship. Then you have the problem of is the whole system still stable if you build an adapter and fire through that adapter through the OLM? And there's like, the more you think about it, the more you have to modify existing hardware. And if you have to do all of these steps, is it not easier to just use, well, a stand that works for that instead of risking your OLM? Also, another point, it blocks your OLM while it's on there, so you cannot test the booster while the ship is on there.
Adrian, there's a pretty
Yes.
simple adapter you could make. Basically,
you
take
could-
the same kind of concept you have the hot stage ring. You do 2 rings, heavily stringered. The bottom part hooks up to the 20 clamps. The top part is all ship stuff, and you just make an adapter for the QD. Bang, done.
But then again, you would block it from the whole system. You basically
impossible.
block.
Is
Yeah,
it?
it's possible, but
But why?
yeah, but why?
Is it me or did the sun just come out?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, the
out of
sun is there.
nowhere.
What
Yeah,
is
and-
that thing that's bringing us light? I don't know what that is.
And solar power. That's will also mention for you that the important thing is also solar power. But just to recap, we have frost on Ship 28 LOX tank there. You can see this tiny little frost ring there at the bottom of the ship. That's frost touching the inner tank wall from the cryogenic liquid oxygen that is now being filled into the ship. And that basically is so cold that it results in frost forming on the outside. And that's why we see frost there. And you can now also see the clear discoloration on the ship. And you can also right now see, what always starts around this time, the venting from one of the access hatches, because every time that access hatch gets a bit frosty, it starts to vent even more. So
Not a leak.
yeah, it's not a leak. It's normal. The access hatch probably just has like a different thickness, a different way how it's behaving in terms of transferring the heat through the metal, and that's why it forms a bit more condensation. That's not a leak. Do not worry about it. A leak would be way more powerful at this point.
It could be a small leak because, well, cryo fluids are really cold, and when things get really cold, they shrink, and the seal could shrink and slightly leak. It's been known to happen.
Yeah, and
Just saying.
and if that would happen, that would be a calculated leak that just is in the design. Like basically nothing of this is in concern or anything unusual. There we go.
Yeah, because then otherwise, because the thing is, we've seen this before, and so when it happens, it's like, okay, whatever, all right. And if it was actually a leak that was a concern, we'll see them quickly aborting the test and coming back to the pad and fixing it and things like that. But we really haven't seen that at any point in the past, so we already consider something commonplace.
Can I just say that I'm nervous about any ship testing now, because the last ship test I had the pleasure to commentate was with you, Alex, was that weird Ship 26 test.
Oh Jesus. Yeah, that was and it was also one engine. That seemed weird.
Yeah.
I mean, it was for a good purpose, but still, it was only one engine.
And you had Jack with you. That sometimes can make it a little weird too.
Yeah, that's true. But it's like we almost commentated over the static fire because we were so surprised it happened. Or it was a static fire, right? Was it pre-burn or static fire? I'm not sure which. Like, I know it was weird.
Yeah, I think with you it was either the pre-burner or the static fire. I know I was on both, but I don't know if with you was on the pre-burner test or the static fire test.
Oh, another question here that is very important that we need to answer is Hazelnut is asking, are the snowmans from rollout safe? Do we know where the snowmans went from the rollout?
I don't know where any of that went, because they brought the SPNTs, the counterweights, and the stand away from the launch site. I think it was like last night or something along those lines. And all the lights seem to be off. So they took them all off, and I don't know where they are now. Sorry.
No, it's just a fun question. Don't worry about it. Space Lover here asking, why is there a need for a ship cryo test at the launch site if they are already done at Masseys? So if they would perform some sort of tanking test right now, Alex, why would they even do that instead of just saying, well, we did one of Masseys?
That is a good question, and my thinking is that there's two things thinking here. I don't even know how to parse that word, but yeah. So one of the things is that we believe that the kind of testing that they do at Masseys is sort of like, as we usually say, is approved testing, where you just shake up things and test the new vehicle and all the valves, all of the fill and drain stuff, right? While here, it makes sense to test it again with a cryo because now it has engines installed. So now you can test things like engine chill. You can actually run through all of the stuff through the engines, for example, without really activating them. You can test how the interaction between the engines and the vehicle goes. You can do things like TVC tests with the cold engines. All that kind of stuff does make sense when you have a new vehicle. Now, Ship 28 will be the first, in theory, will be the first to fly with an electric TVC, but it's not the first vehicle that has been tested with electric TVC. We have had boosters already with that, and also Ship 26 had electric TVC as well and got a testing out of, I think it was in October or something like that when it was tested. So we have had already that. But it's always good to gather more data, so it's not really out of the question. We've seen them, for example, do the same with Booster 9, where it got its own test at Masseys, and then when it got here to the orbital launch mount, it got tested with a full cryo. Then it got into a spin prime test and then a static fire test. The same could be the case for a ship as well. We don't really know, but either way, we're gonna be here to just see what happens.
Yeah, basically it all comes down. It all comes down to the fact, like, is somebody at SpaceX questioning the structural integrity of the vehicle right now and wants a test to verify it? Because that's why you test, right? If you were 100% certain that something would be sealed and proof and everything is fine, you wouldn't test. But there's probably someone with way more knowledge than any of us have here that questions if this is still structural integrity, if this is safe, and that's why they want to test it. Sorry, Ryan, I was cutting you off there.
It's all right. Well, one of the other reasons why they could do a cryo is because a lot of times after they do a cryo, they go back into the tanks to do a lot of the pre-static fire and pre-flight testing. So anything they do inside those tanks, plus the hatches, they may want to leak check or just double check them. It's another reason for doing a cryo. So, there's a lot of reasons for it.
Alex, I will throw this to you to put this in proper context, but I see some not very great news there for a moment. Put the vent stack in perspective for us.
Yeah, I'm seeing the vent stack venting right now. It is also true that the frost is still rising, so I'm not fully sure what's going on right now, to be honest. But yeah, usually the vent stack, maybe it's residual venting. It could be as well. Usually when that vents, it's because they are draining back propellants, and it's sort of like part of the boil off that they have to vent off. So I'm not fully sure. Again, when I'm not sure, you know what I say. Just keep watching and see what happens.
Yeah, it's certainly a weird behavior because the frost rising, but the vent stack, we are talking about the stack right in the middle there, being active. It's certainly a weird combination because usually this is behavior we observe when they pump back fluids from the vehicle. So that's obviously not happening right now because they're still fueling the vehicle. It's just a weird observation here. Torsten Gedak asking, is there's a massive vapor on the lock side of the OFT? Why? Ryan, can you quickly recap, like, what's happening at the OFT while this test is also ongoing?
So there's a lot of vapor going on both sides of the orbital tank farm, actually, on the methane and the lock side. Because SpaceX, after the second flight test, they wanted to hook up the 6 more subcoolers, the 4 on the lock side, 2 on the methane side, plus 3 more pumps, 2 on the lock side, 1 on the methane side. They wanted to hook all those up so that they could have more of a capability for loading in the vehicle, as we were talking about earlier, which will be interesting later on. So here they're basically ops checking the subcoolers and the pumps, make sure that they're working correctly, they're leak checking them, and they're also purging them. So when they do construction work, stuff can get inside the pipes, and well, you don't want that to get into your vehicle. So you do a purge of the lines to make sure all the debris and FOD and stuff gets taken out. That's what they're doing over at the orbital tank farm at the moment.
There we go. Thank you so much for that. Oh, that's an interesting one. I want to answer this. Oh, I want to throw this to you to answer this because I think it's a cool speculation one. What do you think will be the biggest bottleneck for Starship flights in 2024? Who wants to start this very easy to answer question of what will be the biggest? Yeah.
Whether or not the vehicle, let's see how to word this, how successful the flights are. Because if they have an anomaly every single flight, that means an anomaly investigation is needed, which will delay the next one. If they start to go perfectly, then the biggest bottleneck will be getting the vehicles ready for testing. Because as of right now, of course, they're testing 28, and its other half, B10, is got all of its engines, and it's waiting in the rocket garden for the orbital tank farm to be ready. And with the current testing in the orbital tank farm, it looks like it's going to be ready pretty quickly. We could even see B10 roll out next week, which would be cool to see. And then after that, it's Ship 29 and B11. B11 is currently getting its engines in Mega Bay 1 on a work stand. And Ship 29 is currently getting tile work plus some of the pre-flight modifications currently in the high bays, you can see there. Behind that is then Ship 30, and then over on the other work stand, on the left work stand in the Mega Bay, is Booster 12. Neither of those have gotten their cryo test yet. And usually from cryo test to being ready for static fire / flight, you're talking 4 to 5 months. So assuming this stack flies in February, and then the next stack is ready, they could end up being a bottleneck with vehicle readiness. It's just kind of a wait and see, because the one thing is after Booster 12, Booster 13 isn't even fully stacked yet. They just finished stacking the LOX tank last night. So it's really hard to tell what the bottleneck will be. I think they'll get to 4 or 5 flights next year, depending on how spaced out they are. But they'll hit a wall with making version 2. Because version 2 is going to take a while to figure out, and then they got to build it, then they got to test it, and that testing campaign could be a little bit different. We don't really know. There's a lot of unknowns in there, so we're just going to have to wait and see.
There we go. Alex, any additional input about this question, or you agree?
Well, I've seen a lot of comments in chat mentioning regulatory approval and things like that. I think the main way to not get held up by regulatory approval is to not have bad flights, if you know what I mean, right? If the flights have a good outcome, if you just have the less failures as possible, if they do go well, then you don't have as many holdups regulatory wise, right? Because for the first flight, I don't think people have realized how badly the first flight went, especially if you compared to how well the second flight went. We had a non-working flight termination system, which is already bonkers. Many engines going out on the way up. Fires on the engine bay that severed the control systems. The rocket basically went off control. You have a launch pad that can basically sustain the thrust of the engines. All of that changed. That did not happen on Flight 2. All of that went well on Flight 2. So with all of those things not happening on Flight 2, what that means is that whatever they may need to change, because they obviously probably need to change some things here and there, those are probably going to be minor things. And the list of sort of changes and things like that they need to do, it's probably not going to be 63. It's probably going to be way less than that. My bet is probably going to be about that the list is probably going to be about a third of that, or around 20, maybe 20 things or less. That's my bet. We'll see. You can quote me on that whenever they release the requirements and everything. But if you can see the progression here, maybe if this third flight goes even better than that, we're probably going to be at a point where maybe they can launch monthly, even from a regulatory side of things, right? And then the hardware is going to be the holdup, as Ryan was saying. Maybe that's when they're going to have a lot of vehicles to test, and they don't have enough space for testing and things like that. That's probably going to be perhaps one of the bottlenecks. But then again, we also have version 2 coming up here. So what might be the biggest bottleneck? I think it'll depend flight per flight. That's going to be my answer here. That's going to be depending on how the previous flight goes. If it goes well, it's probably going to come down to the testing of the ground systems and the vehicles. And if it does worse, then it's going to come down to how the regulatory side of things go.
Yeah, I think you both have very valid answers about this, and I'm looking forward to see the reality unfold, because I hope we get like 4 or 5 flights in the next year. I think I feel like 4 is not really unreasonable based on the time they now need for 2 to 3 probably. I think, of course, pending very, very bad flights. I mean, there's potential that a flight takes out a lot of infrastructure if something goes really bad. But if that doesn't happen, I could see them fly for like 4 or 5 times. That's gonna be cool.
Yeah, that is my thinking as well, that we may see 4 or 5 flights. And again, we're also going to have that version 2 of a Starship, right? We may see a small stand down of operations for a while as they get those vehicles going. Because it's always hard when you do that kind of big change. If it's actually a big change, it's usually hard to introduce all of that because it's a lot of new stuff. So we'll see. We'll see.
I want to thank some more people here. I want to thank Ian for the super chat asking why not use some kind of paint for heat shielding. I'm not sure if such a actually a paint heat shield that would work for this does exist. Alex, what's your?
Well,
I'm not sure.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I don't think there's really any kind of paint that can sustain that kind of heat shield on temperatures.
Like,
There
what's
might
the
be, but I
ballpark
don't
of
really know.
What's the ballpark of temperatures we are actually talking about re-entry? Do we know that? What the ship might expect in terms of ballpark of temperatures? Or is
Somewhere
that
around
also
2000 Celsius?
Oh,
Thereabouts,
that's hot.
I think. Might be around that, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less, but I think that's a good ballpark, I guess. It's in the thousands, though. I think once you start getting temperatures of like 4 digits, it probably doesn't matter if it's Fahrenheit, Kelvin, or Celsius. It's all very hot.
It's all hot. The concept is it's very hot. So there we go. I want to thank DeWalsh Padra for becoming a Pet Rat member. Thank you for that. I want to thank Ted Holland for becoming a Pet Rat member. My God, thank you for that. And Flippers also gifted a Red Team membership here. Thank you for that as well. And Matt PD, wonder what those eyebrow blocks are for. Eyebrow blocks? Oh my God.
That's
Yeah,
an interesting thing to call them. Yeah.
I can't unsee that now. So Ryan, do you quickly explain the eyebrow blocks?
Well, the best guess.
Oh, sorry.
A lot of us
There's
have
ship
had-
venting.
Huh? Oh.
There was ship venting for a moment. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, all right. The best guess a lot of us have had is they are probably new antennas of some sort, possibly Starlink or something along those lines, for better communication with the ship while it flies. That's the best thing I think of.
Eyebrow. I cannot unsee the eyebrow blocks now. That's really that's stuck in my head now. I think we should push for that. I will make this a thing. Thank you for that, Matt. And here's a New Glenn question. Do you think New Glenn can catch up in 2024 to match Starship launch cadence in 2025? More rockets, more good. Oh, that's like a multi-layer question, because to answer this question properly, you need to know how many flights will Starship do in 2025? How many flights New Glenn will do in 2025? It's like it's a multi-layer question. I will start here as a New Glenn, like a person that really likes New Glenn. I like New Glenn, however, I think Starship will fly more in 2025 based on current trajectories, and that's also because the design of Starship is to fly a lot. Like, that's the whole design core infrastructure thing. I think New Glenn will fly in 2025. That's my prediction. But I don't think it will fly more than Starship, because Starship should be in double digits probably in 2025.
That's the hope. The biggest hold up to that, and we go a little bit further in terms of Starship cadence. The biggest hold up to that is right now they have one pad, one operational pad. Now they are relatively far along at 39A. It's still missing an OLM ring plus a water deluge and a lot of other things. If they were to start on that tomorrow, they could probably get that operational in a year. And then, of course, we've seen all the stuff of them bringing tower segments to Boca for a second launch tower here at Boca. Now, that's a whole different can of worms, because even if they started tomorrow with either leveling out the dirt or putting in pilings for a new tower or a new OLM, it would still probably be at least a year and a half, maybe even 2 years until that pad would be operational. So, as right now, the earliest a new pad would be operational would be 2025. But then there's also the problem at the Cape is they don't have a production site there. They don't have a mega bay. They don't. The current factory that they built is being used for Falcon at the moment. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to see where they would go with that. Later down the line, they need pads badly, like badly. So that's going to be the biggest hold up for Starship going forward, like beyond next year.
Copy. We will let's see, more questions here. I will throw this to Alex. When will these flights stop being IFTs and start being just flights?
Okay, so I'm gonna go and say they have already stopped being IFTs because they were never IFTs. There you go. That's my answer. But yeah, that is for sure my answer. It's I'm partially joking, but also it's kind of serious. That they were never really IFTs. That was sort of like a fan made name kind of thing. SpaceX calls it just like the first test was the Starship Flight test. The second one was the Starship Flight 2, and the third flight is Starship Flight 3. Like literally on the recap video from the second flight, they say Starship Flight 3 or something like that. So yeah, it's not IFT. That was a fan-made thing.
There we go.
I don't use it, at least.
Yeah, I am also.
You do use it.
No, I'm at this point at the flight test. I can tell you, I'm at this point. I just call it flight test. It seems SpaceX really uses whatever. I don't think there's like there's no style guide somewhere that has always called it integrated or always called it flight test. I think it's just a thing of like whatever they think it's fitting for the context and for the wording. So yeah, that's my overall take on this. I don't think it's a big deal.
And the point that I'm trying to make is that the official way that they refer to it on multiple places, when you see any sort of, for example, the website URL says the name of the mission almost always. When they say integrated test flight, what they mean is like a fancy way of not saying full stack flight, because I guess it's just one word, so it's easier to just say it's an integrated flight test of the whole vehicle, right? It's like it's not just the upper stage, but it's also the booster, both at the same time, is integrated flight test. But it is not that they're calling it IFT, is that they're referring to as an integrated flight test as an adjective, not as the name of the mission. But anyways, I've ranted so long about this. Let's move on.
I just call it Flight 1, 2, or 3. Just keep it simple.
Yeah.
Good shout, probably. Good way to call it. This is an easy question. What caused the previous run? Ryan, what caused the previous run of Starship?
Are you talking both the booster and the ship here? Okay, well...
Yeah, basically, what's the current expectation on and SpaceX wording on what happened during the last flight?
Well, the most concrete theory we got for booster is during hot staging, the booster slowed down a little bit too much, and then when it did the flip, it kind of did it all a little bit quick. And some of the propellant probably sloshed around, and then, well, when that happens, you don't get propellant feeding evenly into the pumps when you try to relight the engines. So engines might relight, but they'll start pulling in gas bubbles, or they'll start eating themselves, and you could see a bunch of puffs of gas as they were shutting down and trying to relight and everything. Eventually, all the engines shut down, and the FTS activated, and boom went the booster, and Jack got an amazing shot of that. Ship is an entirely other thing. There could have been a LOX leak on board. It's really hard to tell. Telemetry is not always the greatest thing to go by. It did nearly complete its burn, but SpaceX did confirm that the FTS did activate. Why the FTS activated? It could have gone out of its flight corridor. There could have been something wrong with the vehicle. There's a lot of reasons as to why it could have done it. We just don't know. So,
and it is also true that I guess the correct answer, like the official answer to this, will probably be like, we don't know, right? And we're waiting on SpaceX to tell us what they have found out. The other part of that is, as you mentioned, there may be multiple possibilities here. There may even multiple theories acting together. Like it could be both the sloshing and starvation of the engines, for example, in Booster 9, with many other things like ullage collapse or things like that. It could be so many things going on at once, because that was a very active moment in the flight, right? It could be so many things that we don't really know, and SpaceX really is the ones that are right now working on trying to get that data and trying to go through and figure out what happened. And maybe they do know by now, but they are, just trying to finish all of the report and all of the investigation and things like that, and get ready to actually talk about it publicly. But either way, anyone that you see saying out there, this is the reason why it failed, they're just lying. They're just trying to put out their own personal theory as just what happened. But I just see other people, and that's a fair thing to say, that they just say, this is my guess, and this is what we think. And that's completely fair, right? Because it could be many, many things that surely you have a theory, you have multiple theories out there, and it could be any of them. And that's totally fair. I prefer that kind of way of being like, well, this is what I think, and that's my way of also saying like, it could be slashing, it could be ullage collapse, it could be the Raptors rotting, it could be so many things at the same time that I just
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to tell you this is the
Or
way.
all
No,
at
I
once.
don't really know. Or all at once, exactly.
We may never 100% know exactly what happened because SpaceX may never fully tell us exactly what happened, but they may tell us. So we'll just have to wait and hear from them. So, yeah.
So there we go. Let's see. Alex, do you mind giving us a quick recap where we are right now in the countdown of what's going on here?
Yeah, so we went live because we started to see the orbital tank farm very active. We're also seeing in the background, as you can see to the right, the orbital tank farm is also active, but that's a secondary thing today. You can see a cloud report because we have clouds in the sky, clouds in the ground. But yeah, the orbital tank farm is very, very active. It seems like they are testing all the new ground systems that they have installed in the past few weeks after the second flight of a Starship. And also we have Ship 28, the ship that we think it's going to be flying for the third flight of Starship, because that's been pretty much confirmed by SpaceX that that's going to be the case. And we saw them already loading some of the propellants. We see their very nice line of frost on Ship 28 on the liquid oxygen tank of the vehicle. Now, it might be the case that maybe the methane side is also, the methane tank is also a bit loaded, but it's only the transfer tube and the common bulkhead, and it just hasn't risen enough. Like the level of methane is just not tall enough to touch the walls of the tank itself. So that's why we're not seeing that frost on the methane tank. But otherwise, we're seeing there the propellant already on board of the vehicle. We're waiting to see what's going to happen. It might be that we're going to get some engine testing, maybe a spin prime, a pre-burner test, some static fire, maybe a little bit less likely. That last part is a bit less likely as more fire you start to expect. That's sort of the rule of thumb here. But that's pretty much the summary of where we are right now. And some venting here and there as well. It's not a deep press vent. That is sort of the normal venting that we see as they keep the tank in pressure.
Thank you for that. And with that, I'm stepping aside here because I will look at something else here. And with that, there's a person that takes over that you might know regarding NSF. Chris Bergen, do we have you?
Yeah, hopefully. Can you all hear me 5x5?
Yes, I can hear you.
That's good. Can chat hear me, though? That's the big thing.
I hope so. Anyway,
Well,
I'm out. Bye.
yeah.
Have fun.
Bye, Adrian. Right, so yeah, I was just going to ask where we are, but I just heard Alex doing a summary, so we know where we are. Fun. This is literally the start of IFT3 testing already, which is a good sign because we did. I don't know why that's so funny, Alex. That's why we
because we were just talking about the whole IFT controversy,
there we go.
and then
yeah, I missed that part. Trust me, I'm not in any mood for this. Right, so the good thing about this is what we predicted, wasn't it? That we were going to do a fast kind of like turnaround. We could fully expect Booster 10 to be coming out not before long, and then they'll probably get to the stage where they can say they've completed their testing towards the test flight, and then they'll wait because they won't be launching immediately afterwards. They'll be waiting for the FAA and things like that. But it's a case of proving they can turn this around in a pretty fast time scale. So this is all good news. I'm wondering, by the way, I might have missed this part of the update. We don't expect to get fully frosty, do we? We won't expect a partial load for what might be a spin prime test.
That's sort of the question here, right? What are we going to see? What else are we going to get to with this vehicle? I don't know, Ryan. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we're only going to get a little bit of a methane load. Nothing we can see, as you were saying. Probably just the transfer tube and the common bulkhead. This is usually what they do. They put as little methane in there as they want, as they try to, I should say, to lessen any sort of RUD that might occur if one were to occur. So That's what I think we're doing.
Kind of encouraging, by the way. We've got 5,000 people in. It's a Saturday afternoon before Christmas as well. People like to go shopping for Christmas weekends. So this is pretty encouraging. There's quite a lot of people who are interested in what is just literally just Ship 28 testing, and it's not a static fire test. So that's a good sign. The interest is staying there because I think I've said before, this vehicle probably won't lose its notoriety. It's such a big rocket, even when especially when it's fully integrated, of course. That we do hope that people will find this fascinating for years and years and years. Unlike the booster landings of Falcon 9, which have now become kind of like, I've seen the first 10 or so, people were getting absolutely crazy about them. Then, because they keep coming back one after the other, people are starting to sort of like lose a little bit of interest, kind of expect it. So that's why I like this one, I don't think will lose any of its notoriety. Well, I'm just going to thank some people, by the way, while we're here, because I've just noticed, I've just seen the panel open there. I want to thank these people for supporting what we do because it's important. Cameron supported with a super chat. Mr. That's all the name is, Mr. There's nothing else. A store message. Thank you for all the front and back of house team for the amazing content and hard work. Well, thank you very much for your support. And I'm clicking on it. There we go. Right. And also, H. We're getting some very short usernames here with a super chat. Thank you very much. In order for SpaceX to complete Artemis 3, they will have to increase their test and launch cadence significantly. Our monthly launches by the end of 2024 possible. I'm going to say not by the end of 2024, but I do believe that is the whole point of Starship, to be rapidly reusable to the point of the reuse on the same day. What's the most, Ryan, what do you think is the most they could launch as far as cadence? Let's pretend they've got all the pads, all the launch sites, all the range clear. From a Starship technical standpoint, how fast can they launch this vehicle?
Technical standpoint right now, assuming pads are good and everything right now, they could probably do one every 1.5, 2 months, especially with what they've got refurbishment wise with the orbital pad. But it's really hard to tell because, like, after the first launch, obviously a lot of damage to the pad, a lot of changes they had to make, and then after the Flight 2, it looks like it's hard to tell whether they're doing inspections or just refurbishment or both. So the real kicker will be to see what happens after Flight 3. Like, do they take the back of the booster QD hood off again? Do they take the flex hoses off again? Do they remove the hold down clamps again? Or were those just taken off this time for a more detailed inspection after the second flight? That's going to be the real kicker. So it's kind of hard to tell where they're at technically to be able to pull that off. What do you think, Alex?
I'm not fully sure if 2024 will be the month, the year of monthly flights. I'm now seeing the engine chill lines now actually venting, which is encouraging.
Oh yeah.
But I think that's probably going to be more in 2025. I think 2024 will be the year where we see them transition. First, launch all of the remaining, or at least some of the remaining V1 Starships, and then go into V2 Starship. And then once they are on V2 Starship, they're probably going to be able to do monthly flights in 2025, and then go into bi-weekly launches and things like that, like towards the end of 2025, until they are able to do like one launch every week, perhaps by 2026. That's my sort of thinking. Or at least, if not every week, more like being able to launch every week for a while and then stand down for a bit and then go again and go for a stint of weekly launches, because that's what they're going to need for HLS. HLS said that they're going to need one flight every 6 days. So that's pretty much a weekly rate of launches. So one flight every 6 days, that's the goal that they need to reach with a Starship. We'll see.
What about point to point?
We're not there yet, Chris.
Oh,
I know you love it.
hey.
But
We're a
come
long
on.
way from there, Chris.
Come on, Chris. HLS first. Point to point later.
That's true.
And I'll say this. For Falcon 9, it was only in the last year and a half that they got to a weekly launch rate. So to get there with Starship, it's going to take a little bit of time.
Yeah. For people in chat who might not know, I'm a massive fan of point to point. I think it's the best thing ever in thought about by humans. It literally beats everything, including the invention of the wheel. Thank you. Right, moving quickly on. Lisa says, with a store message, has obviously made a store purchase and said, Merry Christmas to my husband, Joe. So, Joe, if you're listening, you obviously got something coming for Christmas because Lisa's bought you it, and there's a store message in the store. Because when we're live commentary and you buy something from the store, you can actually have the option on checkout to send a message like a super chat, but we just read it out because it comes in our panel. So that is a cool thing. Well done, Lisa. Ronald Hines, Merry Christmas to all. Very much appreciated. Angry American. I can't afford to do like a challenge on the stream, but to see, well, I can't afford to do like challenge, a like challenge maybe, I don't know, on this stream. But if I see 2,000 likes by test, I will gift a membership. I'm with you now. You challenging chat to get to 2,000 likes on the stream. I think that's asking a lot because it's only like 5,500 in. But yes, there we go. Angry American. I'm going to put it on screen. I'm not making this up because it sounds like I'm making it up, doesn't it? It sounds like I'm begging for likes, which I don't really do. I'm not one of those YouTubers. I can't afford to do a thing, but if the stream gets to 2,000 likes by test, which is when the actual strip tests, I will gift a membership. So there we go. There's a challenge for you. Let's see if we get more. It's asking a lot. We're on 1.3 thousand likes. I don't see how we're going to get to 2,000, but we'll have a go. And I appreciate your thought behind that. Silas says, that's the username, by the way, has given a Red Team membership. Thank you. Krieger has become a Red Team member, and Angry American has upgraded to Capcom. There we go. So 2 messages from Angry American there. Hopefully you're not that angry. Right, let's look at some questions here. Let's look at this queue. Here we go. I knew there'd be a question about Ship 26. River Dave Kenny asks, what is the chance that Ship 26 gets sent up as an orbital tank for refueling? Right, Alex, you first.
0. that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
this is the shortest answer from Alex ever. That's almost like a gym off our forum level. No. Ryan, do you have more words on why Ship 26 won't be used now? Because it does look, I mean, I'll be fair, a lot of people in chat, and I'm the same, it did look like a tanker, didn't it? It's basically got no flaps, it's got no TPS, and it's big silver tanks. You can totally understand why people thought it was a kind of a tanker kind of design ship, but it's not that vehicle at all. It was there I think it was to test a deorbit burn with a single engine. Was it a single engine test back when it was on Pad B itself?
Back on October 20th is when it did its single engine fire. Yes.
There we go.
To answer your question, no.
No, that's right. Good. Thank you very much. Yes, I don't disagree with you. I think Ship 26, the next time we'll hear about that is when it gets scrapped. By the way, I refreshed the feed because I thought, well, we're not going to get that many likes, but it was still stuck on 1.3 thousand. It's on 2.1. Either I was not refreshing and we were very close, but we got there, and Angry American has gifted a Red Team membership. There we go. That's a man of his word, or a lady of his word. I don't know, Angry American could be either. But 2.1 thousand likes. That's amazing. Thank you. I just refreshed the stream just to see where we were, and it literally has gone to 2.1. Either we had a surge of likes, or it was just not back in the day when it was at 1.3. Anyway, I'm mixing my words up there, so I'll carry on. More questions about what this test could be. Long hair 2012 Gaming asks, is another cryo-proof possible on Ship 28? Now, that's a good question because let's remember, we can recap this as well, that both Booster 10 and Ship 28 have had cryo tests at the Masseys test sites. Do we know how many cryos they had on Ship 28, Ryan?
2. One on July 28th and the other one on August 3rd.
And technically, this is another one. It's not a full one, though, is it? If it's a spin prime test, if they go for a spin prime, we're hoping, that's what we don't know. That's the important thing to say. We just don't know. You never do know. SpaceX don't put a press release out in the morning and say, right, we'll do some testing today. This is what we're going to try and do. They never do that. Never have, never will. But we can basically hope. And the best hope we can get is a spin prime, because we know it will be a static fire test because there's been no notice. So that's how we kind of work these things. And it's getting quite frosty now, isn't it, Alex?
Yeah, so you can see there's some kind of thin frost above the thick frost line. So you can sort of distinguish two types of frost there. You see like a thick frost with a lot of condensation coming out of it, and then like a thinner kind of layer of frost right above it around the tank, and even all the way up to the methane tank, I think. And that is mainly because the tanks get cold, and so the rest of the whole thing just gets a lot colder. We've also seen these sort of ventings from the liquid oxygen tank coming out. That lowers the pressure here and there, and lowering the pressure at same volume and everything, that sometimes means the temperature also goes down. It's called the adiabatic effect or something like that. Anyways, yeah, adiabatic cooling, I think it is the name. But definitely you can see there those vents, like the one that we just saw, probably what's the word? They basically
Give us the word in
They're
Spanish, and
basically
I'll
a low.
translate it on Google Translate for you.
no, but I don't even have it in Spanish. It's just that I'm trying to come up with a right word here. That it just allows that kind of effect to happen. It allows the tank to get colder and that thin frost to appear. And so that is basically what we're seeing here, that kind of effect. And again, where the thick frost is located, that's where the actual propellant, that's where the fluid, the liquid is located, but the rest is gas. So it's frosty just because the tank is cold.
There we go.
Yeah, and usually there's a lot of moisture in the air down in Boca Chica there, which kind of helps to put more frost on the tank than there actually is cryo, because the entire tank, as you said, is cold, and if there's a lot of moisture in the air, that'll just freeze when it hits the tank. So
cool question here about the best coast, which is the East Coast. Outdoorsman Show. These usernames are so long. It's like when it's a long username, it cuts it in half on our panel. So I'm like reading it like an idiot, but it's because it's cut in half, so it's hard to read them. Do we know if there's any news on the orbital launch table for Florida and when we could see the steel plate at 39A? I can answer part of that by saying that the orbital launch mount for 39A is inside Hangar M at KSC. It's an area of KSC you can't really go and take a photograph from because it's right deep inside a restricted area. But that's where it's actually housed right now. It's complete. It's been complete for a while. As we know, 39A has been kind of mothballed, if that's the right word for it. All these paused for about a year now.
on hold.
Yeah,
on hold is a better way to put it.
On hold. It's about a year, but it's fine. Basically, they've obviously taken the route which makes complete sense, that Starbase will learn a lot of things about how the launch pad, the ground zero, stage zero, I should say, stage zero works before they then implement that onto 39A to save them time. So 39A's tower's there. It's done. The legs are there. They're just going to put, they're going to put the orbital launch mount on top and they'll roll it down the crawlerway and we'll see it. We'll pass our cameras on Space Coast Live. As far as the steel plate goes, that's an interesting one because 39A's got a flame trench, but that's for the former Apollo and Shuttle pad, which is where Falcon 9 Dragon and Falcon Heavy launch from. But they don't have a flame trench at the 39A for Starship Tower. So do we think, let's start with Alex, do we think they'll have a steel plate installed to basically say, well, it worked at Starbase for us, it worked really well, let's have a steel plate at 39A as well?
Yeah, I think the concept at least worked, the initial concept. They could improve upon it. There's probably lots of room to improve things here and there, especially once they get the Raptor 3 engine, right, and they get more thrust out of that rocket. Then it's probably going to need a lot more stuff to counteract that heat and pressure. But, and so 39A could be used definitely to test an improved version of the current system. I don't really Like I kind of see that kind of thing. We might see also a new improved foundation as well at 39A, because I don't think it has the new one that we see here at the OLM at Starbase. So we could also see probably a lot of foundation work for that plate going on there. So definitely a lot of room to improve upon the one at Starbase, and we might see 39A getting an improved version of the plate.
Nice. And you know my favourite thing about 39A, Alex, don't you? Because you mentioned it to me. The chopsticks on Mechazilla's system at Starbase are longer than the ones at 39A. The chopsticks are installed on the tower. They're shorter chopsticks. And that's because they were too long. The ones at Starbase didn't realise they didn't need that long. So they said, well, we've learnt the lesson there, so we'll make them shorter for KSC.
Yeah, the stubby ones, if you want to call them that. Basically, they're the perfect length in order to pick up a ship and a booster right at the end of them and place it dead center on the mount. So they're exactly the length they need to be. I think they should have given themselves a little more room to play with, but that's just me. So I'm not an engineer.
And also, we have seen them building another set of chopsticks, because Robert Strode has another set of chopsticks, and it is also shorter than the ones at Starbase. So we definitely saw with those that it's just probably going to be that way from here on. And now that I mentioned Robert Strode, we were also talking before about the second launch pad at Starbase. That's going to come from all of the tower sections that we saw at Robert Strode being built for a third tower. That third tower is going to be at Starbase, and we saw the first section already being moved onto a barge for transport here, so that's going to be exciting.
Very nice. Lots of questions. I'm trying to get the ones which are more related towards Starship. There's quite a few people asking things which are more about Mars and whatever, which we're a long way off yet. A long way off Mars. It's something where this is HLS. Basically, they want to get Starship ready for their Starlink launches, get it operational. Then they'll move really deep into the HLS commitments, because that does require them to be on point with the refilling on orbit. So there'll be lots of demonstrations on that. In fact, Ship 28 has got a demonstration related to that. It's not going to be two ships launching, or it won't be Hopper launch with a gas can, anything like that. It'll be an internal header tank to main tank transfer, which will be part of their refilling process. Do any of you want to talk a little bit more about what SpaceX has said about that? Because they did mention that Ship 28 was going to have in fact, I think it was a NASA slide that Marcia Smith tweeted from NASA saying that Ship 28's got a demonstration. Alex, do you want to have a go at that?
Yeah, I think at one point NASA said that it is something that they haven't still, because I think it was Michael Sheets that tried to get more information about what that meant from the slides, and I think he got the word back from NASA that they're still kind of looking if that's going to be the case for the next flight. I seem to remember as well that at one point even the second flight was going to have that kind of objective, but it might be that they're just, doing some kind of wait and see situation, whether the vehicle is ready to do such test or not. I'm more hopeful that maybe Ship 28 is going to be the one that's reaching that ballistic trajectory and going in space and coasting and everything. In that case, then we might see that test happening, but we'll see.
Yeah, actually, just for a point of clarification, Ricky Nixon actually asked this: did IFT-3 become a full orbital flight?
We don't really know.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? Ryan, do you want to go on about that? Because it is.
Well, yeah. So the thing is, as Alex said, we don't really know, but it could be. My assumption is going to be no, simply because they haven't actually done their full suborbital trajectory yet. And doing just the suborbital trajectory is actually it's a lot safer than doing a orbital flight, because as soon as you shut off the ship's engines, you are on a trajectory to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere no matter what. If you go to orbit, then you have to perform a deorbit burn, and you need to be confident enough that you can safely, securely put the ship down where you want it rather than have it come down in a place you don't want it. So I think they'll stick with the suborbital trajectory for now. And yeah, I think they'll stick with that going forward. Well, at least for this flight, but we'll see later flights down.
Yeah, and a thing that I should say, because I've seen a lot of people getting confused with certain communications permits and things like that. I think they misinterpret what they say, because it says something along the lines of like it's gonna do a powered return flight or something to Pacific Ocean. There was another one saying the Indian Ocean or something like it. That's what it's been saying for the longest time, like ever since the first permit came out for communications for Starlinks on ships. And so I don't think that really means that it's gonna go into an orbit. I don't really think that just because it is propellant transfer or things like that, it's gonna need to be in orbit. I think the ballistic trajectory, that 1 hour coast phase, is probably good enough to test that thing. So I don't really think it is precisely needed, and I don't really think the documentation really says anything precisely about it being either the ballistic trajectory or an orbital trajectory. It just says what it says, and that's pretty much it.
Nice. Quick some thanks again. It always impressed me the people who just willing to support us, and it's just like, it really is. I can't emphasize it enough. We really do appreciate it. It allows us to do a lot more things to bring more coverage to you fun folk about Starship, which is always great. Charles has gifted 5 Red Team memberships, and Methane Man has gifted 10 Red Team memberships. That's 15 new members who got for free a month of Red Team memberships. Not only just you get your name in chat, it's not one of those things where you just get your name in highlights in chat. You actually get more content. There's actually a membership area on your YouTube channel you'll see from us where we put daily content in there, all cool stuff like photographs and videos and behind the scenes and things like that. It's a really cool area. So that's a cool thing you've got. Thanks to those two people, Charles and Methane Man. So if you do get a membership and you think, oh, I've got a membership, where'd that come from? Just say thanks in chat, because it's nice to say thank you for a free thing, especially over Christmas. Looking at other questions. Oh, actually, a question from Memorajono, who asks, when are we going to see the IFT3 patch? If you talk about the NSF version, that is in work. That's all I can say. I'm not allowed to say too much because I'm a terrible leaker. But as you can imagine, with our 1 and 2 patches, Pauline does amazing work with them. And without saying too much, expect amazing work for IFT3. So that's going to be coming up hopefully soon, because let's face it, the way this is progressing, with Ship 28 out there and already doing this testing, and Booster 10 probably not being too far behind, especially with no damage to the pad compared to the first flight, between the first and second flights, then there's a very good chance that we might be seeing a launch, a realistic launch, in either late January or early February. I mean, it might slip a bit more than that, but that's what we're talking about now. We're talking about weeks, not many months or anything like that. We're not talking about them repairing a whole dug all the way halfway to China from the Boost 7 launch. So this is really good progress, and it's pretty encouraging that we're going to have a very eventful 2024. Let's face it. Ryan will be able to talk a little bit more about this. That just this morning we put out a time lapse from one of our cameras showing the high bay, and it was Booster 13 being prepared. So we're on Booster 10 for the next flight, but Booster 13 was being prepared. What were they doing in Booster 13, Ryan?
They were stacking. They were finishing stacking the LOX tanks. So Booster 13 started stacking all the way back in. If I can check my spreadsheet here. Let's see here. Booster 13, where are you? All the way back on September 5th. They stacked most of that LOX tank pretty quickly, and then it sat on the right turntable in Mega Bay for a while, because back in late September, they scrapped its aft section. We do not know why they scrapped it, but they did. So they had to build a new one. They also scrapped Booster 14s along with it, and I think even Booster 15s as well. So they had to build a new one, which those can take 2-3 months to build because they're pretty complicated. So that finally rolled into the Mega Bay yesterday, and then last night they stacked it onto the left turntable, and hopefully soon they'll get started on the methane tank. Booster 13 might be fully stacked by the end of the year. That's a hope. So it'll be cool to see.
Cool. Speaking of future vehicles, a complete segue into a question I just saw from Longhair 2012 Gaming again. Good question, so I'm going to ask it again. You don't all get one question each. You get questions if you ask a good question. When are Ship 29 and Ship 30 going to get their cryo? Now, that's interesting because Masseys is in play, and that kind of it almost goes advanced to the next vehicles. Where are we with the vehicles right now, Ryan? Ship 29. I've got a funny feeling Ship 29's already had a cryo.
Ship 29's already had 3.
Woo! There we go.
All over at Masseys, yes. Ship 29 had 3 cryos near the end of September, early October, and then it was rolled back to the garden in mid-October. They did some work on it while it was sitting in the rocket garden. Then it's now in the high bay getting pre-flight work done to it as well as tiling work. Ship 30 has not had its cryo yet. We are waiting to see when they will put that on the ship thrust puck stand, or what do you want to call it? Thrust ram stand, and roll it out to Masseys to get its cryo. And hopefully joining it will be B12, which is supposed to be its other half. Or
nice.
Supposed other half at this rate, because who knows with SpaceX and vehicle assignments these days.
Actually, Ryan, I think you wrote an article explaining. Someone asked me this morning in chat, just regular chat, which ships are going to go with which boosters. And I went, well, we've got an article on site, which you can read from Ryan, where it explains the future pairings coming up. So I'm going to spam chat. I want to cheer myself up with some spamming. Here we go. Spam chat. Nightbot doesn't care.
You're once a stream spam there, Chris.
Yeah, well, when you got the power to do it, it's just kind of fun to abuse it. So that's what I've done. Yeah, but actually, to be fair, that is a good read. If you're hanging around and you're thinking, well, this is Ship 28, that's interesting. But what about the future ships? We actually just showed them there on screen earlier in the high bay. And the interesting thing was Ship 26 was like poking its head round the corner. Can we show that again, Jay, just for a second? There we go. Ship 26, don't you forget about me. Just sat around the corner, getting ready to be scrapped. Scrap it, SpaceX.
Well, SpaceX hasn't forgotten about it because they were doing some weird, interesting stuff to it. They were...
Is that venting near the header tanks? I think I'm seeing venting from the new header tank vents.
That looks like venting from the header tanks. Yes.
Oh, Alex, you know what, Alex? You're going to have to get very close to interrupting me if we get close to some kind of test, because you know me, I'll go on a ramble for about 5 minutes and you'll have to say, Chris, stop, it's happening.
Yeah, I'm seeing that venting right now coming off.
What does that suggest? What does that suggest? I'll go back to the future ships, but what does that suggest right now as far as where we are in any potential countdown?
That they're probably loading the header tanks. So normally So I don't really know if suborbital tank farm activity, the way that they load ships here at the suborbital pads are the same way that they load during a orbital flight, right? But when they do it for when it is fully stacked, is they load first the main tanks and then the header tanks. So this could mean that if they're now loading the header tanks, we're probably approaching the last few minutes of whatever countdown we're seeing here for today's test, because usually that's how it goes for when it is fully stacked. In fully stacked configuration, they load first the main tanks and then the headers go at the end, sort of towards the final few. It's the final few 20 minutes of the count, but it takes maybe about 10 minutes to load the header tanks.
Good.
And by the time they vent, it's probable that they are already at least mostly full. So we could be really, really close to a test.
That works. Yeah, the point I was making about the high bay was pretty much backing up what we were saying earlier, that 2024. But again, things can go wrong. But if everything does go pretty much right, there's every potential. I'm going to ask this question to chat as well. of a certain amount of launches in 2024. What's our guess, boys and girls? I'm going to go with Alex and Ryan, but in chat, do mention how many Starship launches there will be from Starbase in 2024. I am going to start by saying 5. Ryan?
4 to 5. It's going to be my answer for a while.
Alex?
Yeah, I will say 5 is like the upper bound. Anything more than that is very unlikely, in my opinion.
I'm going to read these out. Interrupt me, Alex, if anything happens. 5, 6, 4, 8, 5, 5, 5, 4, 6, 5, 5, 6, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 4, 6. Everyone's in agreement here. 5s and 5s and 5s and 5s. A 7 from long hair. Oh, that's interesting. That's ambitious. Lots of 5s. An 8 from... Hang on, I've just seen a 10. Ronald Hines thinks there's going to be 10 launches from Starbase in 2024. 1, they'll have to ask for permission for that. And 2, if that happens, then wow, game on. Because suddenly we've gone from a delay between Booster 7 and Booster 9 of like 6 months between launches, between these 2 launches, Ryan?
Well, yeah, last one was 7 between Flight 1 and Flight 2. But yeah.
So if they bring it down to have 10 launches in 2024, that's some ambitious cadence increase, isn't it? Ross says 24. Right, we're getting silly ones now, Ross. Come on, 24 launches in 2024. I don't think so. But yeah, it's a really encouraging point that if they can get 5, let's say 5, right? They can get 5 launches off in 2024. That just shows the curve. I remember that SpaceX video they put out where they showed their launch cadence over the years, where it's like a graphic of launches going off. Someone will find it for me and I'll put it into chat. And basically, by the end of the video, there's just rockets firing off like missiles because that's how they increase their flight cadence with Falcon 9. And the boosters started coming back as well. That was cool. They showed the animations of the boosters returning to drone ships and to LZ landings. And I thought, well, that really just show how they basically just found their feet on Falcon 9 cadence and Falcon Heavy as well. And that's something we can probably expect, and then some, with Starship in, say, 4 years, 5 years' time. So it's exciting times, and that's why I get encouraged when I see all these ships ready to go. It's a cool thing. Alex, where are we standing?
I think that was when they did something along the lines of like 200 flights or something, and they did that sort of what you mentioned, like that video showing all of the launches and landings and things like that. They're almost close to 300 now because they have done almost 100 launches this year. So ever since then, there's been a lot more launches. But yeah, right now we're sort of waiting what we see from Ship 28 in the next few minutes, because it looks like we might be towards the end of the count of today's tests based on the header tank venting and things like that. So yeah, we're just trying to see what else happens here.
I always like to bandicam off the stream the events such as prop load and things like whatever might be tested on today, like static fires, things like that. And my fear is bandicamming me talking while it's happening because I don't like hearing my own voice. So I'm going to be very careful to try and avoid talking over the point where it does do something. If it does something. Either way, today's been an interesting test. It's the first test of Ship 28 at the launch site as technically part of the IFT-3 launch flare. So this is great news. Whatever happens today is a sign of progress of SpaceX moving towards the 3rd flight of Starship. So we're getting there. And it's great because the good news is that Booster 10 isn't waiting for some massive pad repair. This has all been pretty much gone very well with the last flight. The launch site has survived very well, and there's every chance that we might see Booster 10 roll out. In fact, I'll ask the question, and by all means interrupt if we see anything happen, but when do we think Booster 10 will roll out? Ryan first.
Could be as early as next week.
Alex, what do you think? Do you think they'll stop for Christmas, or do you think they'll keep going?
Oh, I think they're going to keep going. Maybe one day of rest, if anything, and then they're going to keep going. I think,
full send.
Yeah, full send. But I think it's going to be before the end of the year, in the next couple of weeks. 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Good question from Expert, who asks, when would... we're thinking real future now. When would SpaceX attempt a booster catch? How many flights until a ship catch? Also, love the coverage. Well, thank you for your question and your support. And Yeah, that's a big question because people do ask about the catches. What do we think, Ryan?
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
I don't know. If I'm going to be entirely honest on that one, booster, they're going to want to try landing on a pinpoint location in the Gulf for a couple times. Then they'll try catching. Who knows how far down that's going to be. Ship. I don't expect to try on a ship catch till like late 25, 26 or later. Like, it's going to be a while.
What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, 2025 is probably going to be when we see a catch.
The fun thing is, that's a great point by Ryan, by the way. The first thing they'll do with the boosters is very much like with the Falcon 9. They originally didn't want to risk the drone ships, and they went for pinpoint water landings. That basically denotes they've got the accuracy right of the return, because it's a difficult thing to do. Then they brought them back to the drone ships, but of course a lot of them crashed into the drone ship, and a lot, but they could do that. It's a different story with the launch site. They don't want to have boosters returning and crashing into...
And...
that looked like a spin prime test.
Yeah, it did.
Let me record that bit and put it on. So of course, it will be my voice talking. Oh my god! Well done, Alex. Though you well spotted, because I was too busy reading the question at the same time. So that's a good sign. That's a spin prime test, I do believe. We can confirm it's a spin prime, can't we?
Yeah, it's a spin
I
prime.
saw it.
Yeah.
Don't know how many engines. It'll be hard to try to slow it down and see, but could have been all 6. Could have been 1 or 2. It's kind of hard to tell right off the bat.
There we go.
It's interesting because I think I saw some kind of water underneath of the pad, because one of the things that I was hearing before the test was like some kind of a stream of something, and then I saw the spin prime happening, which is interesting.
Well, there we go. They have rolled out Ship 28, and a few days later, they've got it on Pad B doing a spin prime test. That's a good sign. Now, the next question is, what happens next? Let's head to tank venting, by the way. Static fire test, would we say?
Maybe Monday. We got 3 closures coming up this week: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 12 hours. They could do another spin prime or go straight into static fire. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised if they finished all of 28's testing by the end of this week, and it's ready to go. And all they got to do is finish the tiles, take the crane lift points off, and put the livery on, and send it on its way.
Depress vent. Depress, Alex, yeah?
Yeah, that kind of looks like it. I also saw that it seems like it was all 6 engines that were spin primed, but I'm not fully sure.
No, it's certainly a lot. I mean, yeah, definitely a lot.
Yeah, looked like a big cloud, but we'll see. Yeah.
So I'm getting ambitious again. We've got the potential that this is a spin prime in the bag done. Next week they can do a static fire test. There should be a notice, by the way, so we should get some heads up about a static fire test. But you never rest your laurels on those things. You just basically plan as accordingly. But if, let's say, Ship 28 does its static fire test next week, that's done, and then Booster 10 goes out. Do we think Booster 10 will do a cryo before any spin prime of itself? Do we think it goes straight to a static fire test? What do we think? Ryan first.
It could do a cryo first, not for the vehicle's sake, but for the pad's sake. With all the new equipment that they have on board, they may want to test the new subcoolers and pumps that they have with a vehicle, with using LOX and LN2 before they introduce CH4, as well as the new return lines that they have, because they now have a dedicated return line coming off of the vehicle now. Not off the vehicle, off of the main line coming back from the tower and the pad itself. Rather than going through the subcoolers, it is now a dedicated return line. So they may be able to detank faster now. So they may want to test that out before they do any sort of spin prime or static fire with Booster 10. So it'll be interesting to see what they try to do with it.
Cool. This is a question that comes up quite a lot, and the answer is no, but let's answer it because it's a question I've seen a few times. Cannon asks, before ship catching, will the ships be expended, or can they land like they did with Ship 15? Because a lot of people go back to the ship ops and think, well, hang on a minute, they weren't caught and they landed. Or at least some of them tried to land. Some of them went explodey. But their landing legs on those ones, this is a different thing. This is a different kind of configuration now. So can we just kind of like clarify the difference between bringing a ship back from a basically a 25 or even 15 kilometer hop versus bringing it back from orbital and bringing it back for a landing? What would you say to that question, Alex?
It's hard to answer this one because I think maybe there's a point in catching the ships, but it's also already difficult to land on legs, let alone on chopsticks, right?
Yeah.
So I don't really know, to be honest. I think that's probably going to be a thing where maybe they try to do splashdowns on the ocean, right? Doing the same thing that they did with SN15 and so on and so forth. But just do it on the ocean and see if you can match what you would expect from a catching, just like the booster, right? They're gonna be doing that with a booster. Maybe that's what they're gonna do with the ships as well. We don't really know, to be honest. But I think if you're gonna go through with the catching of the ship, then maybe they're not gonna do the whole landing legs thing. We'll see.
Cool. Also, I like this because it means people are getting back interested again after the test flight. James Heddinson asks, I have not been following Starship Delivery for a hot minute, which is probably like a month since the last launch. Does this version have 6 or 9 engines? I'm glad to be back listening to you guys. Well, thank you. Welcome back, James. It has 6 engines, but there is potential a version coming up with 9 engines. So I'm going to ask the questions. Ryan first. When do we think we'll see the version of Starship, and if you think it'll still happen, with the 9 engines, which is 6 RVACs and 3 sea-level engines?
I think 9 engines still going to happen. There's a ton of advantages to doing it. I think it'll also go along with the stretch ship. Now, whether or not that is quote-unquote version 2, we don't know. We don't really know when such a upgrade would come to the ship. And the only way we are really going to be able to tell is either looking at the weld lines on an aft section or a completed vehicle that would show the fact that it has 3 more braces for vac engines, or wait for them to lift a ship, stack a ship onto a booster, and see all 9. That's really the only way we're going to be able to tell. So it's just going to be a matter of time, really.
Alex, what do you think?
I'm not sure when that's gonna happen though. I think we're just gonna have to wait and see when it happens. It could be coming up on version 2 of Starship where they install 6 RVAC engines. And that's when things are gonna be more interesting for the hot staging, because then that's more engines that they can use to give a stronger push on the ship to get away from the booster. But also the booster can also get pushed back a lot more because you have more engines pushing back on the booster. So I don't know. It's gonna be interesting either way, as you just said, for the whole hot staging thing. We'll see what happens.
Cool. Some thanks again. Jim Cabot, gift a Red Team membership. Not the first from Jim. Jim does so many, he's got his own chat command. That's crazy, but true. Thank you, Jim, for your daily support almost, because it really is. Every single day I see something from you, which is very much appreciated. Joseph has gifted a Red Team membership as well. Thank you, Joseph. Angry Americans back again. At NSF Fighter, I read it as NSF Fighter Jets. We don't have fighter jets. We don't have a jet, full stop. Fighter jets have self-sealing tanks. Is there a way to have a bladder or baffle system to keep these fuels where they need to be? All right. Who wants to go for that? Alex, you go with that one first.
Well, they actually have already baffles and like slosh baffles. I'm not sure about what sorts of shapes they have for a Starship. I know we got a view of the tanks We actually got multiple views of the tanks, depending on how you define it. When all of these vehicles started running on the hub test, we got a lot of inside shots of the test tanks because the tanks were open, free to the view of everyone passing by. But we also got like a couple of onboard shots when I think it was SN11. That was the sort of view from one of the tanks. And you can see these circular slush baffles that they have. I believe Falcon 9 also has what are called longitudinal baffles, where it's like a line of baffles instead of being just. I guess it's more like a radial baffle kind of thing, where it comes from the center of the tank outward, not on the center of the tank, but more like on the bottom of the bulkhead. And so you can have those on the bottom of the bulkhead. You can also have along the sides of the tank also those circumferential baffles. So there's a lot of these systems to be able to keep the propellants in check, and it could be that in trying to solve whatever happened with Flight 2, especially with the booster, that might be one of the things that they need to improve, that maybe the baffles need to be larger, or they need to come up with any other sort of structure or anything like it. We just don't really know, to be honest. That's the problem. Right now, we really don't get a lot of insight from SpaceX of what's going on with those systems.
Very good. More thanks while we're just taking questions as well. Titan 3C has become a Red Team member. Welcome to the gang. The Welsh Padre, you've upgraded to Red Team as well. I'm just clicking on these things while I'm talking. That's why I pause a little bit, because it's sometimes a little bit sticky when I click on the thing to put it on screen. Jeffro, I was talking about Jem being a daily. Jeffro is definitely a daily. Jeff has got his own chatbot command as well, because there's such amazing support that continues. In fact, not only Jeff, but RC Horseman and Sheriff Tracy, all three have got their own chat commands because they do so much support. It's crazy. So thank you for all your support, continued support daily, especially when we're not even talking. You just do it daily. It's a wonderful thing, because it also brings in other people into the membership system, which is just a cool way for people who might be real big fans of us but just can't afford it. And most people can't afford to go buy memberships on YouTube channels, let's face it. So it is a cool thing to do, and I really do appreciate it. Six String Simpleton, thank you for giving me a tongue twister of a username there again. Where's the video of Jack going up with Jared? Can someone, one of the moderators, maybe find that in our channel and just put it into chat, because that is a cool video. I don't know if Jack actually put a video out on that one, but I know he flew with Jared. Someone in the back room can confirm if there was a video we did on that one yet, or if because I know
we had a NASASpaceflight live at least with him.
Oh, that's a worse story. Yeah, it's on NASASpaceflight Live. Yeah. Jared Isaacman, I mentioned him quite a lot because he is such a great commander. He's reminds me so much of shuttle commanders, and I've said it before. I say it monotonously, but I think it's an important point to make. That when we're talking about commercial flight, private flights, the way that Axiom and Polaris and Inspiration have worked, I don't think they could have got better people for it. They really have worked it very well, and I think that's a tribute to SpaceX, a tribute to the people involved, and that is an incredibly important thing, because we are into an era now where it isn't no longer NASA astronauts only, usually from military background as well. Usually, not always, but usually. Now it's opening up to the public, and of course it is a very expensive business, but it's a path towards the eventual goal of having everyday regular people going up onto space flights. And I say everyday astronaut, Tim Dodd, he's going up on Dear Moon. So that's a great example of the future planning of where we're going to be going with spaceflight, which I think is an absolutely incredible thing. Moving quickly on, Stage 3 Cam asks, what ship and booster do you think will be the first V2 setup? Okay, right. It's guess the number time. We know the next 4 are V1s, don't we? We know that 28, 29, 30, and 31. Am I correct in saying? 32 and 32. Sorry. 29's dead, isn't it?
What?
No, 29 is not dead. They're actually working right now on it.
Oh, of course, yeah.
None of them are dead. The only one that just 31 got put out to Rocket Garden because it's the latest one, and it's the latest one, but it's also the latest one with a ship stand because Ship 32 doesn't have a transport stand for it, so it can't really go anywhere.
There we go. So what do we think will be the first pairing where it's a V2 Starship? Which designations do you think we'll be looking at for that? Let's have a guess on that, Ryan.
Well, the V2 Starship could be S-35,
Ooh.
or if SpaceX really wants to throw the curveball at us, they could do what they did with Ship. They could do what they did with Raptor 2 and do it with Ship, which was when they started Raptor 2, they started all the way back at serial number 1. So they could restart it with Ship if they really wanted to and throw a full curveball at us, and it would be Ship V21 or I don't know. SpaceX is bad at naming things, so who knows what it could be on that one. Yeah, I would prefer no curveballs because SpaceX they're just bad at naming things, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do to us. Booster wise, it's really up in the air because we've got parts for 14. I think we've seen a few things for 15, but like we don't know if Booster is supposed to get like a quote unquote version 2. There hasn't been anything said about it. So there's just a lot up in the air. It's hard to really say it. I'm not going to say anything definitively or even really hazard a guess at this point because I really don't know, to be honest.
Yeah, that Taco guy is just correct. This is what I was thinking. It was the last ship to die was ship 27. I was getting my numbers mixed up, which is not hard to do, let's face it. There's that many ships rolling around. It's absolutely crazy because we not only see the ships in the high bay and the mega bay with the boosters, but also there's barrel sections and everything for future ships. They have got everything set for an incredible cadence just from Starbase. And then when you bring Roberts Road into the equation, it's going to get even crazier. So I'm very excited about things there. Okay, right. So let's just see where we are because we've basically gone live for the test in the Ship 28, as everyone was crying for us to do, which we always will do anyway. You know what we're like. We even have Raptor sides and Raptor radios just to make sure we're always talking to you because I think it's important to talk to the community. We've had a test today. That's a good sign. It was a Ship 28 spin prime test. It looked like all the engines. Hopefully it was definitely went all well because we can't be in the control room finding out how it all went, but I would assume it went well. It's nice smooth countdown. It wasn't like cars back to the pad halfway through propeller and things like that, was it? It was pretty smooth. Everything went well. And that lays the groundwork potentially for a static fire test on Ship 28 next week because there's road closures to cater for that. Hopefully we'll hear of a notice from Mary that they're going to go for a static fire test with the overpressure notice. We don't know. We'll see what happens. And hopefully after that, before Christmas, we might see Booster 10 roll out towards the orbital launch site. And then we've really got a game on the path towards IFT-3, the third flight of Starship. So exciting things. Any closing remarks from Alex?
Yeah, well, just going to say that we're obviously seeing that vent tag going off, so they're probably already into detank operations. And, you know, they have a little bit of more window. They have up until 3 p.m., but obviously we don't know if there's going to be any more testing, so it's good to wrap up and be able to take a break, right? Because we're doing so many things here at NSF that it's good to have that break. And obviously, Starbase Live is also going off, and we can come back any other time for more commentary whenever it's needed. And lots of clouds on the overall tank farm as well. Cloud report, lots of clouds because they're testing all of that.
That's a great point to make, by the way, because we are always live with Starbase Live. So it's 24/7 live. It's not a case of us closing down the stream and people wondering, well, we can't see anything now. It's just a commentary we pop on and off with. But if anything does happen, because the road closures still last till 3 o'clock, I do believe. I don't think we'll see any more testing, but if they could extend it, if they extend the closure and do some more testing, then we're still around. So it's fine. But for the main event that we've been waiting for with Ship 28, we think that's done. So, if anything does... Oh, there's Roadblock. Thank you very much. It's almost like you can read my mind, Jay. Jay's in the background. Let's give a quick thanks to Jay, He's been pushing the knobs and changing the camera scenes and things like that. He's almost reading my mind because I was talking about the roadblock there, and he basically put it on already. So that's quite clever. That will open up eventually, and that's when we know testing for the day is complete. If there is any more testing, say another prop load or whatever, then we'll be live anyway, so we'll be able to see it. But we're going to round up our commentary part now because otherwise we're just talking forever and we'll start rambling because that's what I'm like. Ryan, any closing remarks?
No, it was really exciting to see. I can't wait to see Ship 28 static fire and hopefully a Booster 10 rollout next week. Be the icing on the cake for that one.
I will quickly say, I think Angry American has done a 3,000 like promise. I'm seeing in chat. I hope I'm not obligating you, Angry American, by any means. But we're on 2.9. So I'm going to kind of like ramble on a little bit while we do it. Because I think we're very close to 3,000 likes. I didn't see it. So I don't know if Angry American actually did say that. I don't obligate him at all. By the way, look, let's face it. The main thing about likes, by the way, is if you can't afford to support us, and that is most people, and goodness me, I totally understand that. Liking a stream, just being here, watching a stream, it all does help. You know, it works for YouTube. That's how it all works. The more people, the more better. And the great thing about our stream is, and I've been on many streams on different subject matters where it's kind of chaos, our community is really good. It really is. It can be a few few hundred people in, it can be a few thousand, it could be tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, like during a launch. It's very rare you see major problems in chat, and I think that's a real cool thing. And there's a 3,000. So there we go. 3,000 likes. I managed to keep myself going for the moment just to get to 3,000, but that's a cool thing. So for now, thank you to Alex. Thanks for being on, Alex.
It's always my pleasure. I have a lot of fun on these live streams.
And thank you to Ryan.
Thanks, Chris, Alex, and thanks to Adrian who left us earlier today. It's been a lot of fun, as it always is here with NSF.
I was going to just say thanks to Adrian because Adrian was on earlier. And that Angry American obviously must have made that 3,000 promise because he just gifted a Red Team membership. Who won it? Let's see who wins the membership. Someone who I can't pronounce. Psychotic is the name, I believe. Got the gifted membership there. So well done. Thank you, Angry American. That wonderful support during this stream. I really appreciate it. And thank you to Adrian who was on earlier. And thank you to Jay behind the scenes. And thank you to all our moderators and all our SPL operators. When you watch our 24-hour stream, it's completely been looked after by operators, and they do work all the way through. They even have their own schedule, which is crazy. It really is a great teamwork behind all that, and all the robotic people who do all these things I don't understand. I do read what they do. I haven't got a clue about their wiring and soldering and programming and whatever. It's really cool that they're all on top of that, so it's very much appreciated. But for now, I think we'll close the commentary part of the stream, and everyone will be sent over to Starbase Live to watch the stream continue, because we'll have all the views on Starbase Live 24/7. So if anything else happens, we'll be there, keep an eye on it, and hopefully next week we'll have a static fire test for Ship 28. But until now, thank you and goodbye.
And here we go.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, Atlantis.
Water towers, fly! Yes! Echo down to nominal.
Flight downside FD off. Bring in FD off. Off. It's orange!
145! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Décollage.
What is it?
Put that in the big bag, you know.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
The methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You read? Sure. We don't need any more of these.